This is Geometry, section 5.4, medians and altitudes of a triangle. So, what is a median? A median is a line segment that goes from a vertex of a triangle. So it goes from the vertex to the opposite midpoint. Goes from the vertex to the opposite midpoint. So find the three midpoints, label them X, Y, and Z, draw in the three medians, and mark the point where the three medians meet as P. So this means that they should all meet at one point, just like the angle bisectors. So this is easier if we have a ruler and we can measure the distance of these segments and then find the midpoint. We can just kind of estimate where the midpoints are. If you have a ruler, it makes it much more exact. So if I estimate that the three midpoints of these three segments are here, here, and here, median goes from B to the opposite side, A to the opposite side, C to the opposite side. So the three medians meet at one point in the middle of the triangle, and that point is called the centroid. So the centroid is the point where the three medians meet. Alright, so it says P is the centroid of triangle CAB, which means all three of these segments are medians, which means these 3 points, H, J, and K, all have to be midpoints. So if these are midpoints, then this piece has to be congruent to this piece, because this is the midpoint of this segment, CB right here. Same thing over here. These two are congruent, and these two are congruent. So we have to solve for X, Y, and Z. We have an X here, but we have a Y here, so if we set these two things equal to each other, we're not going to be able to solve for X and Y at the same time. Same thing here, we have X and Z. So we have to start over here, because these two things both have an X with it. So since these things are congruent, we set them equal to each other. 3x equals x plus 8. Get all the x's on one side. So we've got 2x equals 8. When we divide by 2, we get x equals 4. So now that we know x equals 4, we can plug it in for each of these pieces. So over here we've got 2 times 4, which is 8, plus 1 would give us that this piece is 9. 2 times 4 again is 8, plus 7 would give us that this piece is 15. So this piece is going to be equal to this, and this piece is going to be equal to this. So if we have y plus 2 equals 9, when we subtract 2 from both sides, we get y equals 7. And over here, if we have 3z equals 15, we divide by 3 to get z equals 5. Okay, 2 more definitions. So an altitude and the orthocenter. So an altitude is another segment in a triangle. So this one goes from the vertex. So it starts at the vertex just like the median, but instead of going to the opposite midpoint, it doesn't necessarily go to a certain point. It just goes from the vertex and is perpendicular to the opposite side. So again, all three of these, all three altitudes in a triangle, each one from the 3 vertices is going to meet at one point. That point is called the orthocenter. So orthocenter is where all 3 altitudes meet. So use your name tag to draw in the 3 altitudes of the triangle. So if you take the short side of your name tag and lay it flat against one side of the triangle like this and line up the long side with this point, you can draw a perpendicular line from this corner to this line. So it makes a right angle right there. Same thing from this point down to this line, make a perpendicular line, and again a perpendicular line. So if you draw this correctly, again these 3 points all meet at one point, and that's called the orthocenter. So an example, given that BD is a median of triangle NAB, is it also an altitude? So we're given that this is a median, meaning that D right here is a midpoint. So if that's a midpoint, it means these two pieces are congruent to each other. So to solve for x, we can set these two things equal. X plus 20 equals 2x minus 7. Get all the x's on one side and move all the numbers to the other side. So if we subtract x, add 7, we have 27 equals x. So x is 27. So it's asking, is BD also an altitude? Well, if it's an altitude, then it needs to make a right angle with this side. But this says that this angle is 3 times x. X is 27. 3 times 27 does not give us 90 degrees. So this would be no, because it's not perpendicular to the opposite side, to AN. Another example, write the equation of the line that contains the altitude of PQR through QR. So if it's going through this line right here, that means it's starting at point P. So the coordinates of point P are 9, 10. So we know it has to go through that point. We also need to find the slope of QR, because the slope of the altitude needs to be the opposite reciprocal of that, since it's going to be perpendicular. So the slope of QR, if we count from Q to R, we go down 1, 2, 3, over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So negative 3 over 6 for our rise over run. Negative 3 over 6 reduces to negative 1 over 2. So the slope is negative 1/2, which means the perpendicular slope is going to be positive 2 over 1, or just 2. So if we know it goes through point P, our slope is 2. If we go up 2 over 1, that's going to take us off our graph, so we don't want to do that. Instead, we want to go down 2, left 1. So if we continue doing that, eventually we hit QR right here, and that is our altitude. So the equation of the line containing the altitude through P, we can just write point slope form. That's the easiest one. So again, point slope form, if you forgot, is this. So y1, x1 are just the coordinates of a point on the line. We know point P is on the line because that's where it started. And our slope we said was 2. So our equation would just be y minus 10 equals 2 times x minus 9. Alright, a median, so now we're writing the equation of a median. Median goes through a midpoint. So if we're writing the equation of the median from P to QR, first thing we need to do is find the midpoint of QR. Midpoint of QR. So we have to find the x and the y coordinates. If we look at the coordinates of Q and R, the x coordinates are 2 and 10. So if we take the average of that, add them together, divide by 2. 10 plus 2 is 12, divided by 2 is 6. Same thing with the y coordinates. 4 plus 8 divided by 2 is 12. Again, divided by 2 is 6. So 6, 6, that's our midpoint. And we know it goes through P, goes to the midpoint, so right there, that's our median. We need to find the equation now, so we need to figure out the slope from P to this point right here. So if we count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and over 2, so down 6 over 2 would give us negative 6 over 2 for our slope, which would reduce to negative 3. So the slope of this line is negative 3. We can pick either point that it goes through to write the point slope form. Since we've got this one right here, we'll just use this one. Y minus 6 equals negative 3 times x minus 6. And that's our equation.